Welcome back. Hope you had a refreshing break. There is one announcement. Masterclass Track 1 will be starting at 11:30 at the Connect Room, one floor down. Those who have registered, please proceed. Our first plenary session explores the art of medical communication. May I now cordially invite the chairpersons, Dr. Vasanta Dissanayaka and Dr. P. Sudarshan, to the stage.
So welcome back to the first plenary sessions today. The lecture is World That Heal, Empowering Patients and Peers Through Effective Communications. The talk will be delivered by Professor Arosha Dissanayaka. May I invite Professor Arosha Dissanayaka to deliver his talk.
Very good morning to all of you. Thank you, chairpersons, for the introduction. Thank you, the President and the Council of the Sri Lanka College of Internal Medicine, for inviting me to deliver this plenary. And it's titled Empowering Patients and Peers Through Effective Communication, Healing Words. When I entered medical school and started training to be a doctor, my mission was very simple. I wanted to be a good doctor, and I took every opportunity to look around, to look at people whom I thought were good doctors, to learn from them what were the essential skills that I had to obtain to become a good doctor. And when I was president of the Ceylon College of Physicians in 2022, in my presidential address, I listed 4 qualities, and 5 qualities which I had actually picked up along the way as being the attributes of a good doctor. And along with technical competence and critical thinking, I had picked up communication skills to be perhaps an essential facet of a good doctor. Is communication really important? I mean, is it important? Can't we just write a prescription? Can't we diagnose the illness, write a prescription and send the person off? Is it really important? The background to this arises from the nature of medicine. Now, there are the pure sciences such as biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, astronomy, geology. Those are the pure sciences. Medicine is not a pure science, but a science which is called an applied science based on the other pure sciences. Medicine, along with certain other things like agriculture, etc., engineering, information technology, they are all applied sciences. But what makes medicine very unique is that it is a science which is applied on human beings. So that brings a completely different perspective to the rest of the applied sciences. So look, now my first part of the talk is communication with patients, empowering patients. What are the 4 pillars of a medical consultation? One is gather information from the patient, then transmit medical information back to the patient, then of course support the patient in this process of illness, and finally get the patient to collaborate with you on what you perceive to be the best management plan. So those are the 4 pillars. Now, effective communication, the way I see it, I have modeled it on 2 aspects. The first model is communication, which I call the civility model, and then communication plus, which I term the empathy model. Now, what is civility? Civility, the word civil is a Latin word. It it says that we deal with humans, it's all about being polite and courteous in communication. The way one expects to deal with a fellow human being, polite and courteous. Afford the respect the other person requires or deserves merely by the fact that the other person is a fellow human being. You know, you are equal on earth. This is the expected behavior of our everyday lives. Say you go to a bank, you go to a shop, supermarket, you expect that everybody there will be polite and courteous and respectful. You know, that's what we expect everyday life. And that should be no different within a hospital setting. This includes, within the hospital setting, clear explanations on what we are unable to do as well. In civility, we talk about what is possible, what may not be possible, but in a very clear way. But being civil does not mean that one is weak or one is lacking in confidence. But we are polite, firm, and courteous and confident in our communication. The question which is often asked is, has there been a loss of civility in medicine? Have we become uncivil in our healthcare setup? That is what the SLCIM is spending a lot of time and effort on promoting humane care, because there is a general feeling that we seem to have lost some of our civility. What are the reasons why this has happened? One is, somebody could argue, you know, there is a general lack of civility in the society. You get onto the road, you drive on the road, you see that uncivilness pervading through the entire system. Go to a government office, you see that uncivil nature of the society. So that might be one explanation. Then, of course, some people believe that the whole process of training a doctor, where we tend to look at a body with illness rather than a person, that has made us lose civility, and this was described very well by the French historian Foucault in this book called The Birth of the Clinic, The Archaeology of the Medical Prescription. So he described at the beginning of the previous century, that the training itself within medical schools and subsequent working in hospitals tends to take us away from this humane aspect. Then, of course, the third explanation, which I feel is important, is this power dynamics between the patient and in this patient-physician relationship. Doctors are more powerful than patients, hence you feel that you are able to take some liberties which otherwise you would not take with somebody with similar amount of power. I usually bring about a bit of humanities whenever I speak on subjects such as this. I don't know whether you're familiar with this book, The Chinaman, written by Shehan Karunatilaka. This was his first book before he wrote The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida. And in that book, the book starts with this beautiful chapter, which I'm going to read one aspect of it. It describes this consultation between this alcoholic sports writer and a doctor who is being channeled at Navasiri Hospital. The doctor is younger than my son and has a put-on smile that does not soften the blow. Mr. Karunasena, your liver is being destroyed. And it will get worse. At least I have my heart. My giggle is as pathetic as my attempt to humor. He ignores it and begins scribbling. Can't you give me pills? I can give you pills for the nausea and the fever. I can also refer you to our alcohol counselor. The doctor tears off a chit branded by a pharmaceutical company I have not heard of. The rest, uncle, is up to you. How much time? I keep my tone even and my eyes fixed, hoping the pup won't notice that the old dog is ruffled. If you stop drinking and start eating, exercising, uncle can bat for another 10, 20 years. the things they don't teach you at school. How to live, how to love, how to die, how to stage a dramatic comeback. Now, if we look at this conversation, this is a civil conversation. The doctor is able to gather information and transmit information. Is he able to support the patient, the third pillar? We're not very certain through this civility aspect. But certainly, obtaining collaboration of the patient for future treatment, perhaps. So we move forward from being uncivil to civil, and we achieve some objects of communication. Then we move on to what I term the communication plus the empathy model. We add empathy to civility. Empathy would roughly be something like the ability to understand how the patient thinks and feels, and feel the desire to help and take action. Now, people get into traps trying to differentiate between empathy and sympathy and empathy and compassion. I really don't think we should get onto that argument. But empathy is, you feel how the other person feels and you want to do something. You have the desire to do something to help the person. So if we can add empathy to the communication, so it becomes like a communication plus model. This is another book I wish to share with you. This was written by the late Henry Jayasena, the great Sri Lankan actor, dramatist, etc. It's titled Balha Gilano, which is a phrase from the Bojjanga Pirita. It talks about being Balavat se Gilanwa, Balha Gilano. When he got cancer, he wrote this book about his experience. Unfortunately, this book is out of print now. But in this, he talks about his fear prior to surgery about a colostomy bag being inserted, and the conversation he has with the late Professor Dasiri Fernando, and how empathically Professor Fernando handles this question about his fear for the colostomy, whilst telling him the very true possibility, the very real possibility of getting a colostomy. Why I keep bringing up this humanities aspect of medicine is to learn communication. That is a brilliant source for us to go to. Whenever we read, we see these things in the literature, it helps us. So this is the empathy model, gathering information. It's probably the best. Transmitting medical knowledge, it's probably the best. Supporting the patient, most certainly yes. And obtaining the patient's collaboration for future treatment, yes. So if all of us can move from civility, which is itself something very good actually, to an empathic model, which is civility plus, we can achieve so much of our communication objectives. Is empathy a transferable skill? A lot of people ask. Can empathy be taught in a lecture like this? I think it's possible. I believe just about everything in life is teachable. And that's what, again, part of the SLCIM effort is to teach empathy through humane care, etc. It can be done even in lectures. One sure way to learn is to look at empathic role models. You know empathic role models. You've seen them. You love them. You think they really transform patients and you. Yes. And of course, third is medical humanities. Your engagement with the fine arts in terms of music, literature, dance, sociology, anthropology, history, philosophy, all of that can make you that much more empathic in life. Let's look at this. Now, Gaudimus Igitur is a German word. It is like an anthem which is sung by university students, not medical students, but university students in Europe, especially in Germany. And then John Stone is it's about celebrating when they finish the school, they celebrate the completion of the course, etc. And then, of course, this John Stone is a cardiologist. He wrote a modern day poem with the same title, but of course not a translation, but with the same title, so that medical students on graduation or any other doctor could read this and be happy and celebrate. He goes on to say, "For there will be the arts, and some will call them soft data, whereas in fact they are the hard data by which our lives are lived. For everyone comes to the arts too late, for you can be trained to listen only for the oboe out of the whole orchestra. You can be trained to listen to only one instrument out of the whole orchestra. For you may need to strain to hear the voice of the patient in the thin reed of crying. For you will learn to see most acutely out of the corner of your eye, to hear best with your inner ear." What John Stone is describing, I have termed the communication ultra pro max model. And because some of you, I'm certain, they are able to, some of you, I'm certain, are able to hear what the patient is actually not saying. Some of you are able to see what the patient does not show. This must be where some people say, when they see that particular doctor, just seeing the doctor, talking to the doctor, cures them. This, I believe, is this ultra pro max model, where you can hear what patients are not saying, where you can see what they are not showing, and then do what is necessary, is the ultimate. So let's all try to be the ultra pro max model in our communication with patients. Now I come to the second part of this talk, that is communicating with peers. Now I'm very grateful to the SLCIM for highlighting this aspect, because this is hardly ever touched in communication discussions. Now, for a long time, we had, the whole world had what was called a C2 structure for organizational functioning and organizational leadership. C2 is command and control. You have the boss who will give directions, and there are people who will report to him, and this command and structure, just like in the military, that is how it was for the military, for business, and for healthcare as well. But somewhere along the way, business organizations are far ahead of healthcare. They move towards a more broad-based, more inclusive type of organizational structure and leadership. Healthcare in many countries in the world, in many aspects, have actually moved away from this hierarchical C2 culture into something much more broad-based. And that has brought about this concept of compassionate leadership. Two of the Royal College of Physicians presidents who visited Sri Lanka, Professor Jackie Taylor from Glasgow and Professor Mumtaz Patel from London, both have taken time to speak to us about compassionate leadership. Michael West in the UK has done a tremendous amount of work on compassionate leadership. He talks about attending to your staff, finding out how things are, understanding, empathizing, helping people who are struggling, etc. He's written this beautiful book called Compassionate Leadership. I would advise you, if you get an opportunity, to look at this. So whilst compassionate leadership is taking over the healthcare world, some people say that this is the most effective healthcare intervention ever invented. Much more effective than thrombolysis for myocardial infarctions or aspirin for ischemic heart disease, because if you have a happy, motivated working staff who are all happy to go that extra mile, millions of lives get saved every day. So that is considered such an effective form. Now, our problem is we are still stuck. We are in crisis because we are facing two crises on two sides, a leadership crisis as well as a communications crisis. Now, our leadership of healthcare organizations, I think you might agree, we are still stuck in this C2 model, command and control. we hardly get any training in leadership and teamwork. We very often, now most of you are already leaders of teams and will be leaders in time to come. You don't get any training, but we learn on the job. And we copy our leaders who are quite horrible along the way, and we think that's the norm, and we act like them. And then, of course, our own personality quirks, our own narcissism, our own Machiavellism, the drag triad, they all kick in and make a very unholy mix when it comes to our leadership. So we need to reflect on our own leadership. We need to have more and more programs where we are looking at our own leadership skills. The second crisis is with communication, and we know that within some medical teams, the environment is both uncivil and hostile. The communication is both uncivil and hostile. And we actually justify these also at times. I had the wonderful opportunity created by the SLCIM recently to give a scenario about a problem in a ward within the staff. And then so many explanations I was given as to why it could have happened. And some of them were very philosophical. Some of them were actually very illuminating about what people thought. Some of the things which I gathered were that actually you had to force juniors to care better for patients. If you were not so tough, that they would not work for the juniors, for the patients. So that's one belief. And then, of course, like our parents and teachers say, I was nasty to you because I wanted to make you a good doctor. Then, of course, the power imbalance between consultants and junior doctors. I want, some people have to prove that they are the boss every day, that they are the consultant every day. So they are nasty every day. So some of the explanations that have been given. I want you to reflect on this. We all fall within one aspect, one area under this curve. I think most people are generally civil, but some are uncivil, a small proportion. And a small proportion would be very empathic. And I think it's a continuum, and I think we all spend some time in each category depending on internal and external factors. I will be the first to say that I've spent some time being uncivil. I attempt to spend most of my time being civil and empathic. It's a continuum. There's no shame. We know that we've all been there. So may I suggest to you, I'm not suggesting this only to the consultants or very senior consultants like Dr. Vasanta Disanayaka, they were mentors to us also. I'm suggesting this even to the registrars who are going to be consulting in the future, but who already have they lead teams. May I suggest that we do not fall below civility ever. We will at least be civil if we don't have the energy to be empathic. Civility must be the baseline, but we rise above that every occasion we can within our team. Now, I told you we have no training in leadership. I know that Royal College of Physicians does some workshops in Sri Lanka on leadership within the health sector. But how do we learn leadership? We can, with information so freely available. One of the brilliant sources which I have found to help me has been the Harvard Business School, which is the #1 business school in this whole world. And they have online resources, they share their resources. And recently they shared with me this book, Power of Conversational Leadership. It's called Talk Incorporated, 4 fundamental principles of conversational leadership. They talk about intimacy in terms of emotional and mental intimacy, which is through authenticity and trust. Interactivity, which is all to do with connecting all the time, having channels of communication open up and down. Inclusivity, inclusion, that is even the smallest person, the house officers' ideas are important. At times they have the answer to the problem that we are struggling with in the ward. So inclusion of everybody's ideas when we make decision. And then of course intentionality. What is the consultant's goal? What is the house officer's goal? We align our goals with same intent and we go forward. This is the 4I principle: intimacy, interactivity, inclusion, and intentionality. And this is very new, a book which came out last week, Talk Incorporated. So if we can actively look to opportunities to increase our leadership in terms of communication and other, we get those opportunities, because the basis of compassionate leadership, the basis of conversational leadership is communication. So where do we find answers to our communication problems? I don't know whether you recognize this gentleman. He is Patrick Jane from the very popular TV drama series from about a decade ago, The Mentalist. He helps the California Bureau of Investigation to solve serious crimes through his understanding of human nature. And in one episode, he says this beautiful line: we all need love and affection. We all do. May I suggest, when you step into the ward tomorrow, to share a little more love and affection towards your beleaguered registrars, house officers, and even medical students. Thank you.
On behalf of Sri Lanka College of Internal Medicine, I thank Professor Arosha Disanayake for delivering such an excellent and timely lecture on effective communications. So may I call Dr. Vasantha Disanayake to deliver the certificate of appreciation.